Hello students, welcome to ITLS Academy. Students, in this lecture we will be discussing about the clinical safety data management related to periodic safety update reports for marketed drugs. So what are the main objectives of these guidelines? The main objectives of ICH is to harmonize technical requirements for marketing authorizations. However, because new products are introduced at different times in different markets, and the same product may be marketed in one or more countries and still be under development in others. Therefore, reporting and use of clinical safety information should be regarded as a part of a continuum. And moreover, the regulatory requirements, particularly regarding the frequency of submission and content of periodic safety updates, are not the same in the three regions like Europe, Japan and USA. Therefore, in order to avoid the duplication of effort and to ensure that important data is submitted with consistency to regulatory authorities, this guidance on the format and content for comprehensive periodic safety updates of marketing medicinal products has been developed. Let's have a brief about that why there is a need to develop our guidelines related to periodic safety update reports for marketed drugs. So students, as you all must know now, that whenever a new medicinal product is submitted for marketing approval, except in special situations, the demonstration of its efficacy and the evaluation of its safety, both are based at most on several thousand patients. The limited number of patients included in clinical trials, the exclusion at least initially of certain patients that are at risk, the lack of significant long-term treatment experience and the limitation of concomitant therapies do not allow a thorough evaluation of the safety profile. Therefore, under such circumstances, the detection or confirmation of rare adverse events is particularly very difficult, if not impossible. And therefore, in order to develop a comprehensive picture of clinical safety, medicinal products should be closely monitored, especially during the first 5 years of their commercialization. Surveillance of marketed drugs is a shared responsibility of the regulatory authorities and the marketing authorization holders. They record the information on drug safety from different sources, and procedures have been developed to ensure timely detection and mutual exchange of the safety data. And as you all must be aware that all the information cannot be evaluated with the same degree of priority, so the regulatory authorities have defined the information to be submitted on an expedited basis. In most countries, this rapid transmission is usually focused on the expedited reporting of adverse reactions that are both serious and unexpected. And therefore, the re-evaluation of benefit or risk ratio of a drug is usually not possible for each individual adverse drug reaction cases, even if they are serious. Therefore, periodic safety update reports present the worldwide safety experience of a medicinal product at defined times post authorizations in order to report all the relevant new safety information from appropriate sources, relate these data to patient exposure, summarize the market authorization status in different countries and any significant variations related to safety, create periodically the opportunity for an overall safety evaluation, and also indicate whether the changes should be made to product information in order to optimize the use of the product. However, if the PSURs required in the different countries where the product is on the market require a different format, content, period covered and filing date, then the MAHAs would be required to prepare on an excessively frequent basis different reports for the same product. And in addition, under such conditions, different regulators could receive different kinds and amounts of information at different times. Thus, efforts are needed to harmonize the requirements for periodic safety update reports, which will improve the efficiency with which they are produced. The current situation for periodic safety update reports on marketed drugs is different among the three ICH regions that we just discussed about, that is Europe, USA and Japan. For example, the US regulations require quarterly reports during the first 3 years, then they requires annual reports. The FDA has recently published proposed rules 22, which takes into account the CIOMS working group 2 proposals to 23. And in the Europe, the Council Directive 2001/83/EC and Council Regulation 2309/93 requires reports with a periodic time limit of 6 months for 2 years, annually for the 3 following years, and then every 5 years at time of renewable of the registration. In Japan, the authorities require a survey on a cohort of a few thousand patients established by a certain number of identified institutions during the 6 years following authorization, and systematic information on this cohort taking into account a precise denominator must be reported annually. And regarding other marketing experience, adverse reactions which are non-serious but both mild in severity and unlabeled must be reported every 6 months for 3 years and annually thereafter. And following a discussion of the objectives and general principles for preparing and submitting the PSURs, a model for their format and content has been prepared. Now let's discuss about the scope of the guidelines that has been prescribed regarding the PSURs. This guidance on the format and content of periodic safety update report is considered particularly suitable for comprehensive reports covering short periods, for example 6 months or 1 year, and often prepared during the initial years following authorization. This guidance might also be applicable for long-term reporting intervals. However, other options may also be appropriate. Now let's discuss in details the general principles which has been followed regarding the periodic safety update reports. Though the first point is one report for one active substance, which means ordinarily all the dosage forms and formulations as well as the indications for a given pharmacologically active substance should be covered in one periodic safety update report. And for combination of substances that are also marketed individually, safety information for the fixed combination may be reported either in a separate periodic safety update report, or it might be included as a separate presentations in the report for one of the separate components, depending upon whatever the circumstances are there. The next points in case that must be taken into consideration is the general scope of information. All the relevant clinical and non-clinical safety data should cover only the period of the report, that is interval data, with the exception of regulatory status information on authorization, applications and renewables, as well as on data on serious or unlisted ADRs, which should be cumulative. Besides that, the main focus of the report should be the adverse drug reactions, and for spontaneous reports, unless indicated otherwise by the reporting healthcare professionals, all the adverse experiences should be assumed to be the adverse drug reactions, and for clinical study and literature cases, only those judged related to the drug by both the reporter and the manufacturer or sponsor should be excluded. Reports of lack of efficacy, specifically for drugs used in the treatment of life-threatening conditions, may represent a significant hazard and in that sense be a safety issue. Increase in the frequency of reports for known ADRs has traditionally been considered as a relevant new information. Although attention should be given in the PSUR to such increased reporting, no specific quantitative criteria or other rules are recommended. And judgment should be used in such situations to determine whether the data reflect a meaningful change in the ADR occurrence or safety profile, and whether an explanation can be proposed for such a change. The next principle which is there in context of PSURs is the products manufactured and or marketed by more than one company. So in that case, each marketing authorization holder is responsible for submitting the periodic safety update reports even if different companies market the same product in the same country. And when companies are involved in contractual relationships, for example licensor or licensee kind of relationship, arrangements for sharing safety information should be clearly specified. And in order to ensure that the relevant data will be duly reported to the appropriate regulatory authorities, respective responsibilities for safety reporting should also be clearly satisfied. And when data is received from a partner company or companies might contribute meaningfully to the safety analysis and influence any proposed or effective changes in the reporting company's product information, such data should be included and discussed in the periodic safety update reports, even if it is known that it's included in another company's periodic safety update report. Thereafter, the next principle that comes into action is the international birth date and the frequency of review and reporting. So students, each medicinal product, they should have an international birth date, the date of the first marketing authorization for the product granted to any company in any country in the world. For administrative convenience, if desired by the MAHAs, the IBD can be designated as the last day of the same month. And when a report that contains the information on different dosage forms, formulations or uses like indications or routes or populations, the date of the first marketing authorization for any of the various authorizations should be regarded as the international birth date, and therefore it will determine the data lock point for such purposes of the unified PSURs. And the data lock point, it is the date that is designated as the cutoff for data to be included into a periodic safety update reports. Means till that date only the data accumulated will be included into a particular periodic safety update reports, and beyond that data will be accumulated into the next PSUR. So lock point is the it marks the cutoff date. And the need for a report and the frequency of report submission to authorities, that's subject to the local regulatory requirements, and the age of a drug on the market may influence this process. In addition to that, during the initial years of marketing, a drug will ordinarily receive authorization at different times in different countries. It is during this early period that harmonization of reporting is particularly important. However, independent of the required reporting frequency, regulatory authorities should accept monthly PSURs or PSURs based on multiples of 6 months. Therefore, preparations of periodic safety update reports for all the regulatory authorities should be based on data sets of 6 months or multiples thereof. And once a drug has been into the market for several years, the need for comprehensive periodic safety update reports and the frequency of reporting that gets revised or reviewed depending upon the local regulations or request, and while maintaining one international birth date for all the regulatory authorities. In addition, approvals beyond the initial approvals for the active substance, it may also be granted for new indications, dosage forms, populations or prescription status, for example for whether it is for the children's or it is for the adults, or prescription to non-prescription status, and the potential consequences for the safety profile raised by such new types and extent of population exposures should be discussed between regulatory authorities and MAHA, since they may influence the requirements for periodic reporting. And the MAHAs, they should submit a periodic safety update reports within 60 days of the data lock point. So after that, the next principle that is there regarding the PSUR is the reference safety information. An objective of a PSUR is basically to establish whether the information reported during the reporting period is in accordance with the previous knowledge on the drug safety and to indicate whether the changes should be made to the product information, and the reference information is needed to perform this comparison. Having one reference source of information in common of the three ICH regions would facilitate a practical, efficient and consistent approach to the safety evaluation and make the periodic safety update reports a unique report accepted in all the areas. And it's a common practice for Mahas to prepare their own company core data sheet, that is CCDS, which covers materials relating to safety, indications, dosing, pharmacology and other information concerning the product. A practical option for the purpose of periodic right reporting is for each Maha to use as a reference the safety information contained within its central document, which will be referred to as the company core safety information. For purpose of periodic safety reporting, this CCSI, that is company core safety information, it forms the basis for determining whether an adverse drug reaction is already listed or is still unlisted, terms which are introduced to distinguish them from the usual terminology of expectedness or labeledness, which is used in association with the office labeling. The next point that comes into consideration in case of individual case studies is the description of the reaction. Until an internationally agreed ICH coding terminology becomes available and its use broadly implemented, the events terms used in the periodic safety update reports will generally be derived from whatever standard terminology, for example controlled vocabulary or coding dictionary, is used by the reporting company. And whenever possible, the notifying reporter's event term should be used to describe the adverse drug reactions. However, when the notifying reporter's terms are not medically appropriate or meaningful, then Mahas, they should use the best alternative compatible event terms from their ADR's dictionaries, such so as to ensure that the most accurate representation as possible of the original terms. And under such circumstances, the following should be borne in mind. And in order to make it available on request, the verbatim, that is the information supplied by the notifying reporter, should be kept on file in the original language or medically sound English translation, whichever is applicable. And in the absence of a diagnosis by the reporting healthcare professional, a suggested diagnosis of a symptom complex may be made by the Mahas and used to describe a case, in addition to presenting the reported individual signs, symptoms and the laboratory data. And if a Mahas it disagrees with the diagnosis that is provided by the notifying healthcare professional, it may indicate such disagreement within the line listing of the cases. And the Mahas, they should report and try to understand all the information that is provided within a case report. An example is a laboratory abnormality or not addressed or evaluated by the notifying reporter. Therefore, when necessary and relevant, two description of the signs, symptoms or diagnosis could be presented in the line listing. First, the reaction as originally reported, and second, when it differs the Maha's medical interpretation, identified by the asterisk or some other means. Then let's discuss about the model for a periodic safety update reports. And the sample title page is it contains the periodic safety update report. The title page basically contains first line is the periodic update reports for so and so product. So product name comes, after that the Maha's name and address comes, that is the corporate headquarters or other company entity responsible for report preparation. After that comes the period covered by this report, that is the dates, international birth date, or then after that comes the date of report, like on which particular date that report has been prepared. Other identifying information at the option of Mahas, such as report number, they can also be included into the PSUR. So this is a sample title page. It is the format of the first page of the periodic safety update report. Then let's discuss in details about the sections which are included in the periodic safety update report. So the first section which is there, it's called the introduction about the periodic safety update reports. And the Maha, they should briefly introduce the product so that the report stands alone but is also placed in perspective related to previous reports and circumstances. And the references should be made not only to the product covered by the report but also those excluded. And the exclusions should be explained. For example, they may be covered in a separate report, example for a combination of products. And if it is known that the particular periodic safety update reports on the same product will be submitted by another Maha, some of whose data are included in the report, the possibility of data duplication should be noted. After that, the next section is the worldwide marketing authorization status. This section of the report provides the cumulative information, and the information should be provided usually as a table on all the countries in which a regulatory decision about marketing has been made related to the following, that is the date of marketing authorization and subsequent renewal, any qualifications surrounding the authorization such as limits on indications if relevant to safety, treatment indication and special population covered by the marketing authorizations whenever relevant, lack of approval including explanation by regulatory authorities, withdrawal by the company of a license application submission if related to safety or efficacy, dates of launch when known, and the trade name. And typically, the indications for use, populations treated, and the dosage form will be the same in many or even most countries where the product is authorized. However, when there are important differences which would reflect different types of patient exposure, such kind of information should be noted in the PSURs. And this is especially true if there are meaningful differences in the newly reported safety information that are related to such exposures. And in case when more convenient and useful or separate regulatory status tables for different products, uses or forms would be considered appropriate. And countries' entries should be listed in a chronological order of regulatory authorizations. For multiple authorizations in the same countries, the international birth date for the active substance and for all the periodic safety update reports should be the first authorization date. Then the next point comes the update of regulatory authorities or Maha's actions that is taken for the safety reasons. So this section, students, it includes the details on the following type of actions that are related to safety that were taken during the period covered by the reports and between data log point and report submission. So the points include the marketing authorization withdrawal or suspension, failure to obtain a marketing authorization renewal, restriction on distribution, clinical trial suspension, dosage modification, changes in target population or indication, and the formulation changes. So these are some of the points related to the actions which the Maha authorities take regarding any marketed product in concern of safety reasons. Students, the next point of importance is the changes to reference safety information. The version of the company code datasheet with its company code safety information in effect at the beginning of the period covered by the report should be used as the reference. It should be numbered, dated and amended to the PSURs and include the date of last revision. And any changes to the company code safety information such as new contraindications or precautions or warnings or adverse drug reactions or interactions that are already made during the period covered by the report should be clearly described with presentations of the modified sections. And the revised CCSI should be used as the reference for the next report and the next period. The next point, or we can say the last point, which is of paramount importance while preparing the PCOR in the context of individual case studies, is the patient exposure. So where possible, an estimation of accurate patient exposure should cover the same period as the interim safety data, while it is recognized that it is usually difficult to obtain and validate the accurate exposure data. An estimate of the number of patients exposed should be provided along with the method used to derive the estimate. An explanation and justification should be presented if the number of patients is possible to estimate or is a meaningless. Then after that, comes the other measures of exposure such as patient dates, number of prescriptions or number of dosage units are considered appropriate. The method used should be explained, and if these or other precise measures are not available, then bulk sales may be used. And the concept of a defined daily dose may be used in arriving at a patient exposure estimates, and when possible and relevant data broken down by sex and age, especially pediatric versus adult, should be provided. And when a pattern of reports indicates a potential problems, details by a country with locally recommended daily dose or other segmentation, for example indication or dosage form, should be presented if available. And when the ADR data from clinical studies, these are included in the periodic safety update reports, the relevant denominator should be provided for ongoing or blinded studies, and estimation of patient exposures may be made. So students, that's all for today's lecture. Thank you so much.